Mom, homeschool dad. This is such an important conversation. By the end of this video, we're going to talk about 5 things that you need to keep in mind in order to raise exceptional kids. Stick around all the way to the end so that you don't miss the last one. It's actually the secret ingredient to helping your kids rise up and be exceptional. Was thinking about this morning, chatting with a couple homeschoolers last week, and uh, talking about not bragging, but talking about our 5 sons and how each and every one of them is so uniquely and wonderfully gifted. We have artists and writers and historians and mathematicians under our roof in it, and it doesn't seem like it should be fair that you can have these exceptional kids be raised up under your roof and you release them into the wild. At least that's what the other homeschoolers were telling me about. So I want you to think right this moment in the comments below, shout out how many kids you have and do they have unique talents or interests that you would love to be able to lean into and help them develop so that by the time they graduate high school and they leave the nest, they are completely and totally just like, whoa, in the things that they can do. So shout that out in the comments and I'll circle back later and just address them, even if it's after this video. Now, the very first thing that you've got kids, they have unique talents and abilities. You're a homeschooler. I want you to understand first that there are 3 stages of homeschool. And as you're thinking about this idea of raising exceptional kids, in those 3 stages, we attack learning very differently. So if you haven't taken our free homeschool or our free 3 stages of homeschool masterclass, I will drop the link in the descriptions after I'm done in this video, making myself a note so I don't forget. 3 stages of homeschool. When kids are really little, they're in the foundation stage. They're learning all the basic stuff, how to tie their shoes, how to replace the toilet paper roll, how to read, understanding that numbers mean something and that you can move them around and do fun things with numbers. That's the foundation stage. I wouldn't really look at kids, and it typically is 7 or 8 and under. 7 and 8 and under kids should not be channeled and funneled necessarily into an area where you are putting a pin on what you think they're going to do for the rest of their life. They're still too young. They still have all these things to experience and grow. So there you've got that foundation stage. As kids are getting ready to launch into life, high school, they're getting ready to graduate high school, they're going into trade school or some kind of business field, or they're going off to college. By that time in their life, their talent and ability should already have been identified, and they should have already had opportunity in order to lean into that and to develop their skill set. As a homeschool coach, a homeschool life coach inside our Homeschooling Olympians program, we talk about this all the time. Observing your kids in the flourishing and fun stage of homeschool. There is this sweet spot in learning between the time that kids are 7, 8 and 14, 15. That's my favorite season of homeschool, and that's flourishing and fun. Now I'm going to pause right here in the video and I'm going to say, visit the link in the descriptions after this video. Go to our Homeschooling Olympians page and click on see if you're a good fit and fill out the survey so that we can reach out to you and give you targeted, personalized advice that will encourage you where you are in your homeschool journey. So back to this sweet spot of learning. And I watched this in all of my kids. At some time after about 8, they start to develop a strong interest in something. Now, I want you to again think about your own kids. It'll show up in They're drawing all the time. They want to play in the mud and sculpt things all the time. You can't get them out of the kitchen. They are beating on the drum or strumming the guitar or pounding on the keys. You start to see, wow, they really like this thing, right? So this is where you take advantage. So the first thing was understanding what stage that your kids are in the homeschool journey. Number two is you want to lean into the sweet spot of homeschooling. If your kids are in that flourishing and fun stage, you get to give them opportunities that will allow them to develop their talents and abilities. It is such a beautiful thing. So you identify the stage that you're in, you recognize when you're in the sweet spot of learning. The third thing that you're going to do is you're going to lean into what it is that the kids love to do. Now, I have a couple examples to show you. All of our kids are completely different. Completely different. They're uniquely talented in their different sweet spots. We have one that loved history, loves history. He also majored in sarcasm, but as far as homeschool goes, he loved history. And so what we did with him was give him plenty of opportunity to read and study historical events. And the hands-on projects that he did were all about history. And it was beautiful. It meant that we did not do other things. Instead, we gave him the opportunity to lean into history. Our next son is a writer. He's also an artist. When he was little, we called him Michelangelo because he was always covered in markers. And then we've got our three musketeers. Our three musketeers are a musician, a mathematician scientist, and then a true Renaissance man that everything he does is just amazing. So in this leaning into what kids love to do, if they love to play with clay, this is one of our kids' first sculptures that he ever did. He was taking a class at the local community college and they had to make a rattle. And so he created this rhino rattle. Now the glaze had been, it was during COVID, so they had to blindly choose glaze, so it came in this crazy pattern. But for his clay journey, we got him plenty of clay, and we created a zone in the house that was plastic covered so that he could actually take the time to work with the clay and not worry about the mess. So in this third step, you really want to give your kids the materials that they need and then give them exposure to the techniques so that they can actually start to hone their craft. Same kid is very multi-talented when it comes to art. He fell in love with crochet when he was 4. I wouldn't say fell in love with it. I taught him to crochet because he was driving his brothers crazy during read aloud time. But over the next, so he started crocheting at 4. By the time he was 12, he was a skilled crocheter, and now he's a master crocheter. He's now 18. And he went through a massive crocheting season during COVID. And in this leaning into season, so you have kids that are gifted and talented. They show interest in something like crochet. And so what kinds of things can you give them? You give them materials and you give them access to classes, tutors, teachers, so that they can actually learn techniques that they can then apply to their craft. The same thing happened to our musician. Right about the time that he was 12, we had moved from one location in the country to another location. We were kind of out in the boonies, and he had a little guitar, and he asked if he could go on YouTube and learn how to play a song. And so Of course, buddy. At the time, I didn't know anybody. We didn't have access to guitar classes. Go on YouTube, knock yourself out. Well, he was 12 and now he's 22. Master musician, master musician, because he was given a guitar and then classes and opportunity to hone his craft. Now, this may not seem like this shouldn't feel like, wow, this is like, I never knew this before. Kids like something, so you give them materials and classes. Like, Bekki, duh, of course that makes sense, right? But I see this when I'm coaching homeschoolers all the time. They have kids that love to paint. This is one of our son's very first paintings. I know it's ridiculous. So say you have a kid that loves to paint, but they never have time to pick up a paintbrush and paint because they're so busy doing math and Bible and history and writing, and they never get to do their craft. Remember, we're talking about the sweet spot of homeschool. It's after the foundation stage, and it's before they launch. There is no list anywhere. Please hear me. I'm going to say it again. There's no list anywhere that says, these are the 42,000 things that your kids need to learn before they graduate high school. That list does not exist. Homeschoolers are shocked when I say that all the time, but you know this is true. Instead, you know that they need to learn to read. They need to learn to communicate in the written form and orally. They need to know their basic math facts. They need to know how to find help when they need it, right? So what are the other things that you need to give your kids in order for them to grow to be exceptional? These are the secret ones, but they're not so secret. The fourth thing, so after you know what stage you're in, after you've identified that you're in the sweet spot, you've identified what it is your kids love to do, and you're giving them materials and classes, you need to give them time. Time to practice, time to make mistakes, time to try things, right? Most kids are not like our youngest son who just watches a video and then does it, right? Most kids, like me, see that I want to do something and then I need to learn and I need to fail and I need to practice and I need to learn and I need to fail and I need to practice. Your kids are no different. And the challenge that in our culture, especially with all the social media, especially with all the screen time, the challenge that our kids have is not that they can't be a sculptor. It's not that they can't be a master musician. It's that they're not given the time to practice their craft, to practice their art, to practice their dancing, to practice their music. Now, this is the same if you have academically drawn kids. One of our sons is drawn to math and science. So that means he needs time to observe the world around him. So often when he was in that sweet spot, I would send him outside just to observe the natural world. And he, even within the last 6 months, he's now 6'3", 20, almost 21. He was laying on the concrete, observing a puddle, and he was looking at water tension and all of these things. I'm like, what are you doing? For him, he just needs time to think through, to make his observations so that he can form his questions, so that he can design experiments, right? So it doesn't matter whether your kids are in the artsy side, music, dance, painting, sculpting, knitting, crocheting, all that stuff, or if they're on the academic side, the mathematical, logical science, or if they're in the middle where they're writing and diving into things like history. Your kids need time to actually pause and go deeper into these topics. So as a homeschooler, You're gonna give your kids an unfair advantage. Here's why. When you look at our son's first painting, my guess is that you think, wow, I I couldn't do that. Or if you look at our son's first sculpture, you might think, first sculpture, really? But what I want you to see is that he was given time to make things. For as far back as I can remember, he would he would make the biggest messes on the planet. You could tell where he was in the house because there was tape and scissors and cardboard and duct tape and all the things. But he needed to be busy. He had to be working with his hands. And so he was given time to work with his hands. Do you see this in your own kids? School can get in the way. With homeschool, you give your kids an unfair advantage because by the time they graduate high school, they're masters at their craft. They're masters at their craft. My son who plays guitar will make you cry with the music that he plays. My mathematician, scientist will sit down and just explain these grand things with scientific facts and knowledge, but he has the ability to communicate clearly so he can bring it down and explain it to your fourth grader. It's beautiful. Now, back when they were 12, here's the thing. Back when they were 12, it looked like they were behind. They didn't know all of the same things that some of their peers knew. They just didn't, because they were taking the time to become experts in their field. And I want you to give yourself permission to give your kids the time they need to actually lean into their craft. And as I wrap up this video, I said that the secret ingredient would be the last thing that I talked about. And we're right there. The secret to having your kids develop into being exceptional is to allow them to be bored. They gotta get on the other side of boredom, because creativity lives on the other side of boredom. That means you have to unplug the screens. It means you have to say no to some of the social events that are flying at you at full speed. Sometimes it means that they're not participating in things like sports or youth group or that kind of thing. You have to make time in their day, in their life, that they can dabble with things, dabble with clay, dabble with paint, pick up a guitar and mess around, touch a keyboard and realize that it makes music, spin to a song on the radio or on Spotify or wherever you listen to music, and start to develop a passion and an interest in a topic. If your kids never have time to be bored, they will not have time to become exceptional at something. They won't discover what things they're interested in, and then they can't become exceptional because, I'm not saying that they're not going to be successful. I'm not saying that they're not going to go on to do great things. But don't you want to launch them into life with this confidence that comes with having identified something that they love, and then given the time to develop it into a skill set in a way that sets them apart? The lessons that you learn by diving deep into something far outweigh this surface education. Somebody out here on somebody watched one of my YouTube videos yesterday, and their comments were basically like, homeschoolers are so much worse off than their peers. Homeschool's disgusting. And I'm thinking, oh my Lord, if you could see what happens to kids when they're given the opportunity to blossom in their sweet spot, lean into what they learn, lean into what they love, given materials and opportunities, given time to practice, you can't even possibly comprehend how much further those kids go. Have you ever seen a trebuchet? One of those old medieval, I think it's medieval, but it's a catapult thing. And you have this machine that slowly winds up and then launches something, right? You can search up pumpkin launching on with trebuchets. Homeschool should be like that. When people are like shooting with a machine gun and they're just like facts and figures and tests and standardized things, right? Your kids that are going to be exceptional are loaded into a trebuchet, and there's this slow down. It's slow motion as it winds up, and sometime really close to when they launch into life, the trebuchet takes all that potential energy and launches them into life. And they go from being behind all of their peers, which is just a myth, but you'll feel like they're behind their peers. And suddenly they're so far ahead, it dumbfounds everybody. People who had been telling you all along that homeschool is dumb, homeschool's disgusting, homeschool kids never do anything great. The people that say those things are going to be a lot of the same people that say things like, wow, you're so lucky. Your kids are so great. They're so kind. They're so talented. It's ridiculous. It's an unfair advantage. So, how to raise exceptional kids. Number one, understand what stage of homeschool you're in or parenting. You can do this even as a non-homeschooler, but you got to pay attention. Number two, when you are in that sweet spot season, lean into it. Push books aside as much as possible and lean into what kids love. And you can imagine that as my son was dabbling with painting, he was watching videos, he was reading things, and those would double up as subjects. He would read the history of painting, the history of things, the science of things. So make their academic load smaller so that they have time to pursue their talents. Give them access to materials and classes and tutors and experts that love what it is that they love so that they can be inspired. Give them time to practice and let them be bored. Let them be bored so that they can develop an interest in something. I personally would lovingly lock my children outside. Like, we would get through part of the school. I would give them a snack and a drink, and I would say goodbye. Come back after you've been bored and you figured out something to do. And oh, there's videos somewhere in our, where the kids are banging on the door. Lovingly, go play. I mean, what a mean mom. Go outside and play. Go outside and play. The most creative summer that my kids ever, was, it came because I walked into their bedroom and it was a pit for the 100,000th time, and I was done. So being the wonderful, strict mom that I am, I should have caught it a lot sooner. I took every one of their toys away. Every single one of them. I put them in bags and bins and I put them in my room, and they were not allowed to touch them. For the entire summer, they had no toys. They had a ball after the first 2 days of having conniption fits. They had a ball. They invented games. It was the origin of their story that, I guess it was the midsection of their story that they still talk about and they still play. They have this fantastic fantasy story that they have orchestrated and written together. It's amazing. They didn't need the stuff. The stuff just got in the way. The stuff just tripped them. The stuff just made me frustrated because they were never cleaning. Our kids don't need more stuff. They don't need more academics. They don't need more worksheets and papers and tests. They need time. And they need, when you can see what it is that they love, they need opportunity to develop that into a skill. So anyway, that's my big thing, how to raise exceptional kids. I would love to hear what you guys think. Make sure you follow the link in the descriptions to go to homeschoolingolympians.com. And when you click on the face of my youngest son, you'll see he's in his graduation cap where he earned his high school diploma and his associate's degree, right? He's right there. Click on that. It'll take you to the Homeschooling Olympians page. Then find the blue button that says, see if you're a good fit. What that's going to do, it's going to open up a survey for you. You're going to be answering questions so that I can see just a little bit inside what you have going on in your homeschool. And then it'll be my goal to, number one, share Homeschooling Olympians with you, but number two, to give you personalized encouragement, personalized tips and tricks that you can use inside your homeschool today. Okay, or as soon as I get through the surveys, because sometimes it takes me a day or three to get through the surveys. Depends on how many people fill them out. I think that's it. Hope you guys have a great day. Happy homeschooling. I can't wait to read the comments to hear what your kids are great at, what kinds of things you've given them as far as opportunities for them to develop their skill sets. And I will see you next time.